Okay, welcome everyone again. Today we'll be talking about concrete action items and ideas for funding seekers to increase citizen science funding, specifically in the social sciences and the humanities. Let me welcome some of our panelists today. On board, we have Susana Fonseca. She works at Zero, where she's a member of the board of directors. She coordinates the area of sustainability and new forms of economy and acts as project coordinator of the European project Life Ask Reach. Welcome, Susana. Next up, we have Florian Covelli, who has been working for the benefit of the general interest for 23 years and is the founder and executive director of the Institut Français du Monde Associatif. Welcome, Florian. And we also have Olivier Boin on board today. He is the acting director of a French scientific foundation and excellence laboratory dealing with international and research mobility. Welcome, all of you. We're super happy and honored to have you here and looking forward to an exciting session. And now I would also like to invite our audience to introduce themselves so we know where you're coming from and who's joining us today. We have created a short poll, which I'll be starting now. So it would be great if you could take a minute to answer this question. Great, thank you everyone. Thanks for taking some time and to answer this poll, and really nice to see who's joining us today and what your background is. Okay, now without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Kelly Achenbach. She's communication officer for COESO and she works at the Max Weber Foundation. Today she will introduce COESO's funding advocacy plan. The floor is yours, Kelly.
Great, thank you. And did we get to see the poll? I didn't see it show up on my screen. Did everyone see the results?
Yeah, you should.
Okay, great. It was just me who didn't see it. Fine. Great, thank you everybody for being here. As Francisca said, we'll talk a little bit about what COESO is and what the Funding Advocacy Action Plan is. Starting with COESO. COESO stands for Collaborative Engagement on Societal Issues, and it is made up of a consortium of 15 plus partners in 6 different European countries. I say that plus because these numbers don't include the, some of the pilot projects that we give money to that are their pilot citizen science projects. It is funded by the EU Horizon 2020 program. The project began in January of 2021 and it runs until the end of this year, 2023. And very broadly speaking, the project has 3 main goals. 1, to identify the needs and challenges of citizen science projects in the social sciences and humanities. The second is to develop what we're calling the Vera platform, which is an online platform where professional academic researchers and then professionals in society can find each other and build citizen science projects together. That will be coming out soon in its beta version. And then the third goal is to enhance financial support to citizen science projects in the social sciences and humanities, which is just a fancy way to say we want to stimulate more grant money for them. And to do this, the COESO project is carrying out a number of different tasks, which you can read about on the funding advocacy page on our website, and Francisca will put that in the chat. So clearly the reason we are all here today at this webinar is related to this third goal. One of the tasks related to our funding advocacy work was to write what we named the Funding Advocacy Action Plan, which you can see here. This plan was written based on a research study, which was also part of the COESO project, called the Landscape Study on Funding Schemes in Social Sciences and the Humanities Citizen Science Activities, long name. Francisca will also put that in the chat if you're interested. We also drew from a document called How to Advocacy, which was written by the Opera's Research Infrastructure. Also, you can also find that in the chat. So don't worry, I'm not going to start talking about all these different documents. I just mentioned them to give you some context and some background about our funding advocacy action plan. So let's get to the funding advocacy action plan content. In the document, we make this claim, which is based on what we learned in our landscape study. Visibility and comprehension of citizen science and its impact are the main issues for both applicants and funders in social sciences and humanities. So this claim that we are making might seem controversial. What we're saying is that the general concept of citizen science isn't clear. So even for those people who are doing citizen science in the social sciences and humanities, even for those people, it may not be clear what the term citizen science means. And perhaps also for funding entities who fund citizen science in the social sciences and humanities disciplines. So we're not saying that people don't know what they're doing. We're saying that people don't know how to talk about what they're doing. And the reason for this is because many people use different terms to talk about the same things. So the US-based Citizen Science Association has focused on this issue in the past year. And we'll put a link in the chat to some links that they have and work that they've done on this. And then on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, the Campus Engage in Ireland recently published a 61-page report about the issue. So terminology is a big deal, but it's not the topic of this webinar. It's important, though, to point out here that these lack of shared terminologies can get in the way of funders and fundees finding each other. Because funders or fundees might not be aware of which terms to search for or to look out for, and fundees might be using different terminology than the practitioners use. So I'm just curious if you're interested in engaging at this point. If you find this to be an issue, if you could give us a thumbs up in the chat. If you don't find it an issue in your personal experience, a thumbs down. While you do that, I'm going to continue talking and wrap up this slide. So the actions that we suggest in the funding advocacy action plan that I'll talk about in a moment were designed to help increase the visibility of citizen science and its impact on society. And they encourage collaboration and coordination between stakeholders, which ultimately result in stakeholders understanding each other's languages better. I can't see everybody the way that I have things set up. I'm just wondering, well, I'll ask later if we got any thumbs up. So the plan includes 4 main categories of suggested actions with a total of 15 different actions. Some of them are for funders, some of them are for fundees. And of course, it'd be too tedious for me to go over all 15 of the actions right now, but they're laid out for you on pages 10 through 14 of the plan, which we'll put in the chat. But for right now, I'm just going to focus on the actions for the fundees. What I'll do is go over one action within each of the 4 categories, plus I'll add one extra action, which I find extremely important. And as you can see here, the 4 categories are raise awareness of your work within your communities, build your community, prepare the ground for community uptake, and act together as a community or community in action. Regarding the first one, raising awareness of your work, it's important to not take it for granted that your communities, and that means even the people within your own organization, understand what your work is. So if the person in the office next to you is not working on your project, they may have no idea what your project is. And so one obvious way to mitigate this is to have truly reader-friendly materials available for dissemination, maybe on your website or even printed. And reader-friendly implies that the materials are written for the audience that you want to understand your project. So you would write different ways and have different kinds of materials available for lay people versus project members versus colleagues that are in similar projects. We recommend that you take the time to develop materials that make your project easy to understand for all the possible stakeholders involved. In the second category, build your community, one action we recommend is to host community events where you share good practices and useful information, etc. This is especially important if you're a small organization and if you struggle with writing grants or keeping yourself updated on funding opportunities, because by hosting events, you strengthen potential collaborations and you build alliances that could eventually lead to being part of larger projects. And it gives you the opportunity, of course, to establish your niche within your community. Oops. The third category, prepare the ground for community update. In this category, we list some preemptive actions that you can do to prepare your community to engage with what you are offering, that is citizen science. So one action we recommend is to host events for funders. Doing this is important because it provides opportunities for funders to engage with you and to get to know your community even before you apply for the funding, but also after you have the funding. When funders engage with your community, they can better design and tailor their funding programs around your community's needs. Also, most funders have some way of evaluating the projects they fund, and if they have the opportunity to understand your community needs close up and interact with the community members or project members, this could help them with creating more realistic evaluation models. And finally, the category of acting together as a community, our suggested action is to liaise with other applicants. So let's say you see a funding action that, a funding opportunity, but the funding period for you is too short or the bureaucracy of the call is too much. If you liaise with the other applicants, you can find out if they also experience these same challenges, and then you can approach the funding agency together, which will be much more impactful. So taking actions together is much more likely to create change in the system than acting just as a single organization. And then the very last action I want to mention is to explicitly highlight the presence and value of SSH disciplines in multidisciplinary projects. So if you're designing a project that includes disciplines in the STEM and the social sciences and humanities disciplines, or multiple disciplines within the social sciences and humanities, it can strengthen your proposal if you clearly showcase why it is an advantage to have a multidisciplinary approach. SSH disciplines engage with communities differently, and they also produce valuable results. So when you highlight this, it makes your project look extra good, and helps with giving SSH disciplines visibility to the funders. Okay, and speaking of funders, the next speaker comes from the funder world, and my time is over. Thank you very much. These are our partners. Here's pictures. 3 pictures of the upcoming speakers, and I will pass the floor on as soon as I can.
Great, Kelly, thank you so much for this presentation. Yeah, you will find the funding advocacy plan in the chat, and there are plenty of resources to read up more on this. Yes, as you said, over to Florian now. You are welcome to take the floor, introduce yourself and share your experiences as a funder engaging with potential fundees.
Thank you, Francesca. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here in this webinar. I'm a founder director of Institut Français du Monde Associatif, which was created in January 2019 in order to promote knowledge of civil society organizations, what we call here in France associations. and it has been designed as an intermediation hub to match the association's needs with research, and its mission revolves around the collaboration between social sciences research and associations. In 4 years of existence, it has mapped over 1,000 researchers, laboratories, and organizations working on matters connected to knowledge of associations. It has funded 25 new research projects, among which 10 participatory research. That's it for who is the Institut Français du Monde Associatif. My presentation will be divided into 3 parts. I will start to tell why it is so important for us to support participatory research. In the second part, I would like to tell you about the obstacles we have observed concerning participatory research. And in the last part, I will share with you the main levers to promote participatory research that we have identified. Why is it so important to support participatory research for us? At first, it's a philosophical and political issue. Associations are very legitimate to contribute to research because they are places where people build knowledge. It's even written in the 1901 law regulating French associations that defines them as organizations that put together resources and knowledge. The problem is that they are not recognized for the knowledge they create, and that they are even not conscious themselves that they are legitimate to contribute to research. That's the point. After that, the consultations that the Institute has launched and our first years of experience have shown that researchers and practitioners are very far from each other. On the one hand, practitioners consider research as very far from their concrete needs. Too conceptual too. They consider the temporality of research as too long. 2 or 3 years is indeed very long when your treasury covers only the 3 next months. What's it the reality in France? And the consequence is that they don't use research as a strategic resource. And on the other hand, researchers often ignore the experience-based knowledge. And when they are approached by practitioners, they can also be afraid to be instrumentalized and that their research is misunderstood as a consultancy by practitioners. So as an answer to those big issues, participatory research can help to legitimate associations' contribution to research. And it can also help to close the cultural gap between practitioners and researchers. And now, what are the obstacles to participatory research we have observed? The first one is the cultural obstacle. Most of the time, associations ignore what they can expect from research, but it can be useful for them, and they also ignore that they can contribute to a research. Concerning French researchers, they are not trained to participatory research, or not enough trained. Participatory research in social sciences is not widely spread, not always well recognized, and not well valorized and published. So when a researcher decides to use a participatory methodology, they know that it won't be as useful in terms of career as a classical research. That's a cultural problem. The second problem is about time, because it requires more time to design a participatory research, and it requires more time to answer to call for projects, because you have to identify the associations you want to work with, who will be relevant representatives involved in the research. You will have to have a project being validated by the governance of the association, make sure that the research activity will be compatible with the current activity of the association and for the duration of the research. Participatory research needs also more time to be produced by a collective of researchers and practitioners, because participation is a long process, and because practitioners have to be acculturated and even trained to research. We estimate that the time is almost doubled for participatory research compared to classical research. And as I told previously, time is a specific problem for associations who are not used to make plans for the next 2 years. Several participatory research that we have supported have experienced issues with the engagement of the practitioners during the whole period of the research. And now, what are the main levers to promote participatory research? Based on those statements, we have identified several levers. The first one is to raise, and Kelly spoke about that, to raise associations awareness, to raise not only association, to raise awareness of the interest, the conditions of success, and the limits of the participatory research. We have to explain to associations that participatory research reinforces professional capacities, such as strategical or management capacities, but it can also strengthen the power of individuals over their lives. It can either contribute to social innovation or to inspire public policies. But it's also very important to explain the limits and the conditions required by participatory research. The condition for association is a strong strategic determination in order to mobilize any human resources concerned during the whole duration of the project. And the limit is that the results of the research can be unexpected and sometimes even not pleasant to read for associations. We also have to explain to researchers the interest of this methodology to reinforce experience-based methodology and to renew scientific practice. And we also have to inform funders about what can participatory research bring to their fundees and about the necessity for them to support this kind of research in the long period and also to adjust their process of selection with adapted assessment grids, for instance. A second lever that we have identified is the importance to develop participatory research networks. As this methodology is not widespread, people involved in participatory research are isolated, and we think it will be useful to organize practice communities in order to share good practice and to confront conceptual works. That's what ECSA and COESO are organizing through this present webinar. And the Institut Français du Monde Associatif want to contribute to this network dynamic through Europe and also in France. I will share you in the chat 2 platforms, an international one and a French one that are proposing online resources, publication, and second one, and webinars too. There it is. We also think that some tools and initiatives could help. I will share in the chat a French auto-evaluation grid for participatory research designed by the French association Science Ensemble, Science Together, could translate. And this grid gives guidelines to build auto-evaluation indicators to make sure about the quality of the participation and also to monitor the impact of the research on its stakeholders. So you will find it on the chat, and I'm sorry because the document is in French. I would also like to speak about the creation of a third-party monitor role, what we call in France tiers veilleur de la recherche, that is very interesting and an important lever to support participatory research. The third-party monitor role is an external actor who does not implement the project, but has a consultation role to ensure the good citizen science practices and the meaningful cooperation of all participants. It has become a condition for big funders of participatory research in France, such as ADEME, the National Agency for Environment, or even the National Research Agency. This third-party monitor role can help the participants of the research with methodological resources, or they can also have an alert role to identify issues and help the group to find solutions. And at last, I would like to speak about a funding program that we have developed, 100% participatory research that aims at supporting research dealing with socio-economic models and value created by associations. Through this program, we tried to integrate some of the levels I have just shared with you before. For instance, we allowed a longer time to apply, and we launched a call for expression of interest before launching a call for projects. A call for expression of interest is more open than a call for project, and we didn't expect to receive projects totally completed. It has allowed us to share recommendations with applicants so that they could improve their project. We also had the opportunity to put in contact researchers and practitioners when the teams were not completed. And we organized a seminar with applicants in order to give them some clues and recommendations concerning the conditions of success of participatory research. That's it for my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Florian. Thank you for sharing so many valuable insights, and I'm sure we have some time to pick your brain in the chat, in the Q&A in a little bit. Okay, now over to Susanna. You are invited to take the floor and present your organization and how you use some of these strategies to secure funding for your projects.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Susanna Fonseca from Zero. So Zero, it's an environmental NGO, a Portuguese environmental NGO. We've been working on many different, and we work on, let's say we're a traditional NGO, so we work on many different environmental issues. I'm more focused on circular economy and sustainability, but we have people working on different aspects. Yeah, and what we are partners of COESO, so we are developing one of the pilot projects in Portugal around the theme of tourism. But my background is in sociology. So I work in an environmental NGO, but I started as a researcher, as an environmental sociologist. So I have this background, and I have had this challenge of discussing, trying to integrate the social perspective in some of the actions we develop on how we act. And so COESO was a good opportunity because it's a citizen science project, and I managed to, let's say, build some bridges between being an activist or environmental activist and keeping some of my roots in environmental sociology. And the team was also very well connected with these issues, so it was quite an interesting experience. But of course, citizen science is not our main activity. But it's true that from the experience with COESO, we realized that there are also benefits from this approach to us as an NGO. But I'll speak a little bit more about it at the end. But thinking now more specifically on these funding issues, so what we've been trying to always have is different sources of funding coming from different type of organizations, be it foundations, be it European projects. We also work with some companies every now and then. And so trying to diversify our sources. For us, what really, because this is important also, but we started in 2015 as an organization. So we had to build all these, let's say, the networks, we had to build the connections. And what we did, for example, we are members of many different umbrella organizations throughout Europe. And that has opened us new avenues of work. Not only we have a lot of information, but we also have contact with many different organizations. And we started being invited to one project or another project. And then from there, we managed to, let's say, strengthen this network. So nowadays, for example, most of the projects we are involved, most of the fundings we receive all come from this these networks that we have been establishing. And it's very also interesting because in my case specifically, we are now being invited for projects because of my expertise as a sociologist. So it's let's say an added value that some of the partners in this environmental area see, is to have someone with this perspective on social sciences. Of course, in many cases very instrumental, you know, how to make an interview, how to do a survey, how to have the right indicators to measure behavior change. But these are all, I see it as all as bridges that we are building between different areas of knowledge, and this of course also helps bringing this perspective into projects that regularly would be more, I wouldn't say engineer-like, but environmental-like projects. So this has been a good, let's say, a good experience we've been having from our work and from these networks. Also, we didn't have so far. We will have for the first time an event for funders, not only for funders but for our supporters, let's say. So not only to the whole community, not only those who actually give us money, let's say, to our work, but also the supporters, journalists, etc., in order to present our values, our mission, what we have achieved so far, you know, in order to build, because this is something that we see a lot in this document that Kelly has mentioned, you know, this building of kind of relationships that you kind of feed throughout the process and the years, and you give back not only in reports or whatever, but you also try to put it in a more communicative way, you know, to make them understand what you are doing, what we are using your resources for. I cannot tell you if this is going to work well or not, but we do see it as an important strategy. We are doing it for the first time. Of course, we regularly we have these feedbacks with our supporters, our funders, but this will be a more, let's say, a proactive approach, inviting them, you know, to our field, let's say, and be together with us. Also, what we, and this is kind of the reflection I wanted to share with you, resulting from the work in COESO, is this, because it was mentioned before, you know, this work, usually working with citizen science takes time. And you need to sometimes, you know, you're busy doing all these things, and then you need to slow down a little bit, find the right moments, try to involve, put different lenses, you know, to understand what people are saying and how you can use it in your work. And I think from this reflection, for us, this is something I would like to do now internally at Zero. So we are, we have around now, I think it's 20 people working at Zero. So in many different areas, as I was saying. And so what I would like to also bring and do inside is bring this knowledge of how valuable this perspective of citizen science can be, even to our positions. You know, when you're trying to prepare a position about something, about political measures that you want to see implemented, you know, having the opportunity to listen other voices beside our own, because we sometimes, you know, environmentalists are very, let's say, they're capacitated, they believe in what they defend, but then of course we need to listen also to other perspectives and try to find these connections in order to build better ideas that can more easily be implemented. And I think this is one of the experience we get from COESO. I know this is not so much, let's say, a reflection on the funding part, but it's kind of a reflection of the work that we, as an NGO who is not focused on citizen science, we can bring from all this collaboration in the projects, and then bring inside also this perspective on how to do differently and how to prepare our positions differently. Of course, not all the positions, but, you know, the main themes the main discussions. For example, we have now big issues in Portugal. One of them is the new airport. Should we have a new airport? Where? What the impacts does it have? This kind of very contentious issues. I mean, I think it's also very relevant to have this more citizen science approach. Actually, we did use some of these approaches already, because we use people to measure the noise, for example, because there's a lot of complaints about the impacts that the present airport has on many different communities around it. And so we also use this kind of technology and the availability of all these people that are in place to give us also data that we can then use to our policy. So we are doing some things not so let's say so structured in a such structured way as many of you are, I'm sure, are doing as daily practitioners of this perspective, but as an NGO, I think it can have a very good can give a very good contribution to our actions, and in order also to make us be more alert to different perspectives and have positions that are balanced and can more easily then be implemented in society. I think for now, this would be my presentation. I hope I managed to keep the 10 minutes, which is always a challenge for me, but I'll be here also for the Q&A for anyone who wants to ask something, or in the chat if you want along the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanna. Yeah, with this, let's open up the floor for questions from our audience. You may raise your virtual hand or write in the chat, and then our excellent speakers will address your questions.
Well, I've seen from the, if I may, I've seen from the survey that there are other NGOs present. So I don't know, maybe it could be not only them, but I've seen that, and I was curious to know a little bit more about them also.
Maybe I'll just start by addressing one question that has actually been posted in the chat before about sharing the slides. Kelly, we will coordinate, but either way, this session is recorded and will be put on YouTube, so you can definitely find everything there. Okay, we have one question for Susanna. Could you elaborate a bit more on the value of citizen science for your NGO?
Yeah, just, well, thank you for your question. Yeah, the idea is that from the COESO experience, you know, listening and having like focus groups and having different strategies to reach out to people, see how they, in this case, we were studying tourism and the impact of tourism in the city of Lisbon, in this case, in a specific neighborhood, more particularly, but overall around the tourism in Lisbon. And so it was it was a very interesting experience that I would say I already more or less know, because I've been involved in some other projects as a researcher with citizen science. But what I've seen and I let's say remembered from this experience now with COESO is the benefit that we can have from having these strategies where we are more in contact with different people that actually live in the places that we want to intervene for some reason. And, you know, knowing their reasoning behind doing something or defending something that sometimes, for example, for us is, I wouldn't say undefendable, because I think I'm inventing a new word, but, you know, it's more difficult to accept it because you see it in a different way. And sometimes we see it because Zero works very much at the national level. You know, at the policy level, that's our main focus. And so, you know, it's good to come down and just, let's say, be inspired also by all these different perspectives, some of them more aligned with us, others less aligned with us. But this helps us, that's the way I read it and interpret it, this allows us more to be more aware of the having a better knowledge of what we are saying and proposing, and the impacts of what we are saying and proposing can have on different people in different places, let's say, in this area we are intervening. And this for me was, it's not something new, as I said, but I think it's something that I want to bring also as like a strategy that we try to, for example, do focus group. I know focus group, for those that are specialists on citizen science, is a very tiny element and might not even appear in some of the strategies, but, just having these opportunities to listen to other voices that usually we don't listen so much, because at some point we are, discussing with specialists, discussing with politicians, and discussing with our colleagues from different parts of Europe that are in these networks, and very specialized discussion on things. And then there's the reality, and we have to connect. And this, for me, I think it's the most it's beneficial. But as I was saying, we also use because now with new technologies that you have and things that allow for people to be like monitors, that they can monitor things, for example, that are then feed up into like a database, and we can use it to also to advocate for something. So this and we use it, and we try to do it in a scientific way, just to be able to say this is happening. And so also using these kind of strategies to bring more information and to strengthen our interventions. I think it's I would say the two big interactions that Zero has been having with this very broad approach of the citizen science. I hope I answered.
Thank you very much. We have one more question here in the chat about the challenges for making citizen science projects sustainable, along with researchers' careers that is often relying on short duration funding. What are the opportunities and conditions to get big grants? Maybe Florian, you're muted at the moment, but maybe you can share some insights on that.
Okay. I don't know if it's not easy for me to answer this question because we don't give big grants at the Institut du Monde Associatif, but we often are a first step toward bigger grants. So, but I see that Olivier has raised it, and I think
perfect. Thank you so much, Florian. And yes, Olivier, you are very invited to take the floor and also share your insights on the funded platform with us.
Yeah, I think it's hi everyone, and thank you for this session. To try to answer Jessica's question, especially about opportunities. One of the work that is currently doing COESO is to map the funders and to make the information available to at least at the European level of what are the opportunities to get grants for citizen science related projects. And maybe what I can try to do now is also show I'm the head of a research foundation excellence laboratory dealing with project funding and international mobility, and what we have been developing over the past years, and that's the reason why we kind of engage with COESO, was to develop this a platform called Fundit that I will briefly introduce you, especially when it's regards citizen science. So it's a platform we developed in France under the national. I don't know if you can see my screen. I think it's a platform we developed back in 2015 with support from the French Ministry of Higher Education and Research to map the funding opportunities for in SSH, in social sciences and humanities, and mostly for the, I would say, for the scholars, younger, more senior ones in the social sciences and humanities. And what we've been developing, and the focus was to try here to map the funding opportunities for SSH scholars and also for international mobility. And this is a kind of the link that we have today. It's based on the current state of the funded platform. So you can see that there are like 134 calls open for funding research and 186 for international mobility. And if we go here, we have mapped over almost 700 institutions, funding institutions over the past years. And you can, choose with the type of funding institutions you would like to figure out. But if we want to zoom in on citizen science, especially in the funding research, so you have 134 calls open. And if you get in the event search, we created recently for the COESO project, a citizen science field. So that if you select this and then you validate, you will get the 20 calls that are currently open. So you can load more of them. And for example, when you click, so you have the number of days before the deadline, so that you can choose and you can have a look at the one. For example, you open one and you can have the description, and then you can get you have a link, a direct link to the website of the call, and also the possibility to link with the funders when it's not the European Commission and it's a foundation that may be less known. In a sense, there is a possibility to learn more about about this. So if you are, for example, interested, again, I will go into the citizen science here, funding options. You can check, for example, let's take this one. So we had looked at the various calls in the work program 2023-2024, not only those related to the cluster 2, that is SSH intensive, but also looking at other clusters or the missions, since they have like a significant citizen science component. And so we try to map and make the information available on these calls. So here, for example, let's take this one here. It's a call again by the European Commission. And if you're interested here, you can bookmark this. There's a star here, and what I would encourage you and your community, in a sense, is to open here to create a profile, and then if you register, which I will not be doing here now, but you enter your personal information, and then you will be able to create an account. By creating an account, you will be able to choose the disciplines, the thematics, and the scientific area you would like to be associated with, and you will receive you will choose on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis the calls that have been published, newly published, and that are associated with your profile. So, for example, for the citizen science community, if you register a profile and say that I'm interested only in the citizen science call, obviously you could have a larger request. But if you're only interested in the citizen science call, this means that you will receive on a daily or on a weekly basis the calls that will be published on this topic. And what we're trying to do with the COESO colleagues and with Kelly, who's doing an outstanding job on that, is to identify the funding institutions. And we are now in the process of developing or publishing more and more calls on the platform. So that maybe we see that there's an increasing number of funding institutions and funders dealing with citizen science and opening calls and grant possibilities, and maybe that would be a way to be informed on the more systematic basis on what are the funding options for citizen science. This will, I think, be cumulative when we have more possibility through to impact the funders and to tell them that they should take into account citizen science, or citizen science should be part of their calls. So that this means that we'll be able to publish more calls and give more access to funding for scholars and integrate this on the larger basis in their research agenda. So we have a platform that offers now, it will be then in the Vera platform that will be developed by COESO, and that will be strictly focused on citizen science. For the moment, we opened a citizen science window on this funding call platform, but Vera will be, I think, ready in the coming month. Will be, I would say, the environment for citizen science calls and grant possibilities and options. So I encourage you, I will put the link in the chat. And if you want to, create a profile, it will be a good, I think, way to be informed about the funding opportunities, the past ones, the current ones, and the future ones. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Olivier. What a fantastic resource. Thank you so much for sharing and demonstrating. Kelly, you raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that by saying, if anybody here goes to fund it and sees that there some call that they already know about is not there, please let us know. That definitely helps the whole community to have access to more funding.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Absolutely.
You can send an email.
Get in touch with us because the COESO colleagues have made, I think, a very great effort to try to map the funders who are currently offering grants for citizen science. But I think it's an ongoing process, and it will be really good to be fully aware of the citizen science funding opportunities, and then we can report that on Fundit, and it will be also on the Vera platform as soon as it is online and fully operational.
Great. Thank you very much, Olivier and Kelly. Coming to wrapping up this discussion, I just wanted to check in with Christopher Stiles. You had your hand raised previously. Did you still have a question, or?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for a great event today. I just wanted to reiterate the point that Kelly made at the beginning about just communicating project aims and outcomes clearly on our project websites and such. Just I'm relatively new to the citizen science arena, but yeah, just looking through a few related projects, sometimes it can be hard to demonstrate the key points to what the project's aims are. So having kind of like avoiding the jargon and the slogans and that sort of thing, I do think is very key for people to, especially a lay audience, just to visit a website and know what the project is about at its core, rather than throwing around sort of key terms and jargon and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to reiterate Kelly's point a little bit.
Thank you, Christopher. I think, yes, that is definitely a point that is very relevant and specifically to the audience that we want to communicate to. Okay, looking at the clock, I think let's wrap up for today. Thank you all so much for a very exciting, engaging session. Thank you specifically to our speakers, Susanna, Florian, Olivier, and Kelly, for your presentations, for sharing your invaluable insights. And thank you also to all of you for participating in this discussion. As I said, you will find this recording on the ECSA YouTube channel. And with this, I'd also like to invite you to follow our social media channels and also subscribe to our newsletter. I will put the info in the chat right now. You will find more information on what we are doing and other webinars such as this. And over to Kelly for a few final announcements.
Great. I just added also in the chat that COESO has a new podcast out. It is for anybody who's interested in citizen science in general. It's a professional podcast company that has worked with COESO to create it. The first 3 episodes are out. They're not too long, about 15 minutes each, and there's more coming. So if you're interested, please take a look and subscribe. Also, I am adding into the Twitter, I'm adding our Twitter handle into the chat, if that interests you. And if you know of any funders that might be interested in participating in a workshop with COESO next week, you can pass on this link to them. It will be also an online event, and it's with funders only, to talk with them about what's working, and for them to share their practices with each other, to reach out to the citizen science community. And that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you again, Kelly. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely afternoon and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.